Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken and welcome back to another video. Caspian got a massive slew of nerfs in the Wild Hoard update, and it's something that I surprisingly haven't covered on the channel yet, so we're going to do that today. Because Caspian's had a very interesting story over the past few updates, and I want to talk about the state of Caspian, and also something that's very disappointing to me about these new Caspian changes. So let's just jump right in. First of all, what actually happened to Caspian? Well, it was going to be a lot worse on the PTS, but luckily they walked back on some of the changes. Still though, the trend is that his damage is a lot worse now, and generally the uptime on his damage has been made less effective. So he has one less ammo by default. Whoop-de-doo! But also, his pistol now takes 2 ammo instead of 1. So kind of walking back on that ammo efficiency change that they did a few patches ago. It's not quite back up to 3 like it used to be, but it's just down to 2. And that's part of why the ammo got nerfed to 20, so that way it's an even number, because it just makes sense. On top of that, measured Cadence now has a massive nerf, where it also is less ammo efficient, and now you won't be proccing it equally between the pistol and the sword. Now it's once again heavily slated towards the pistol, because I believe it now takes 4 ammo? Or is it 2? We'll see once we load in here in a second. On top of that, they also massively nerfed Rogue's Tempo. Okay, here we go, here it is. Yeah, every 4 ammo consumed, right. Yeah, they were going to nerf the damage of this too, but they didn't do that. Anyways, they also nerfed the range of It's Got Some Heft for some reason too, but we're not going to be playing that. Yeah, they really nerfed Rogue's Tempo, and this is the thing I don't like about this update when it comes to Caspian. They gutted it. They nerfed its damage. They were originally going to nerf it by a lot more, but they ended up settling on, I believe it's 600? Yeah, 600. But the thing is, it now no longer has the stun at all. Instead, it's a slowing projectile. It has a 40% slow, I think? Doesn't say here, but I believe it's a 40% slow. Also, we're going to buy some armor plating here. And I have a major problem with this, because I think Caspian should keep his stun. I know that may be a controversial statement, but the reason why I think that is because the stun gave Caspian some pretty massive identity, right? He was the flank with the base kit stun, and, you know, high burst as well, and also he's a femboy. And so yeah, that is like a core part of his character, and when you take that away, it makes him a lot less original, and there's a lot less of a reason to pick him. Yeah, he still does good damage, although the damage is worse too, but why would you pick Caspian over someone like Lex now? Lex also does a lot of damage up close, right? He even dual wields. But, you know, Caspian has that reveal and all the unique stuff that makes Lex one of the most annoying characters in the game. Caspian now just basically has a glorified net shot. I mean, it's net shot, but it does a bit more damage, but it's also way harder to hit because of the whole fact the projectile is a lot slower if you don't have stacks. It's just not the same, and it makes Caspian feel a lot less original, and just to kind of... Oh, that was a 1k reversal. Okay, geez. Just to kind of compare how ridiculous that is that they got rid of Caspian's stun. Let me just float by you a few similar comparisons, right? Just to show how much this hurts Caspian's identity. It would be like if they took one look at Vora and decided, Dark Siphon? Cripple? What's that? Dark Siphon gets to slow now, right? No more cripple on Vora. That would really suck. That would make the character so much more bland, so much less effective, and it would take some of her identity away. Yeah, there would still be the tendrils and the unique projectiles and the fact that Vora is awesome and all that stuff, but like, that would really hurt, right? Or another example. Maeve is the only character in the game who can double jump. That's kind of her shtick. What if we took that away? No more double jump. She's just a character with some movement abilities and a weapon and all that now, just like Androxus or Eevee or something like that. I just don't like the idea of taking away a character's identity like that. A piece of their identity that really helps to distinguish them from other characters. And also, I feel like the stun was such a more valuable tool than the slow, which obviously is the point of turning it into a slow. They wanted to make it less effective. But I just don't think it's the right way to go, because the stun, yeah, it could be countered by resilience, and it still gets countered by unbound and all that. But it was still so helpful even when you did have unbound at level 3, because it would interrupt abilities. It would interrupt channeled abilities. If you wanted to, like, shoulder bash away with Ashe, Caspian could interrupt that, and that was a huge deal. You can't do that anymore. And it also makes it way harder for Caspian to secure kills now, even though he still has high damage, because his damage also got nerfed. So, you know, it was kind of like the deciding factor that would determine whether you would get a kill in a duel or not, and that's just gone. I'm just not a huge fan of that. And it seems like they're doing with Caspian what I'm afraid of for a lot of characters, and especially Eevee, when people talk about nerfing Eevee, because that's, you know, the character I main, the character I love, obviously, right? They buffed Caspian to an extreme in the previous update. People were asking for a Caspian buff in the sense of they wanted his movement ability to be better. They wanted it to carry momentum. I myself included, I wanted it to carry momentum. It's a great change. It continues to be a great change, and something Caspian has desperately needed. And, yeah, we got what we wanted. But on top of that, Evilmojo decided, oh, we're also just going to slap on a metric crap ton of buffs to his damage. And it made Caspian OP for like 2 patches. And yeah, that was disgusting, and it was a bad thing. But because of these buffs that they gave Caspian, what they've now decided to do is nerf a completely different part of his kit, which is the Rogue's Tempo, which, to my knowledge, if I recall correctly, didn't even get touched in the original series of buffs. So, ooh, I killed him. Hey. Basically, the series of events is, okay, so the community asked for a change to his dash. Evilmojo gave us the change to his dash. On top of that, they gave him a bunch of unnecessary damage buffs that made him overpowered. So, to nerf Caspian now, they decided to go in a different direction by nerfing something completely different about the character, instead of the actual problem that they buffed in the first place, which was the damage. They still nerfed the damage, but Rogue's Tempo just caught the biggest stray of 2024, and it's like, why? And that's why I never, ever, 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 ever am in support of Eevee buffs. Because I'm afraid of the exact same thing happening to my character, because I know the Evilmojo balance team tends to do this type of crap. Where, oh, okay, let's say they buffed Eevee, like they were going to buff Eevee's health a few patches ago. And they still technically did, but at least they didn't buff the base health like they were going to. And it's my fear that, you know, if they do something like that, people are going to complain about Eevee. She's going to be too strong. She's going to be objectively overpowered. And then they're going to nerf something random, like, what would be a comparable change? I don't know, let's just say they increase the cooldown of Blink to 6 seconds, or something silly like that. They would just completely nerf some other random part of her and completely kill the fun of the character. And I think that's exactly what's happened here with Caspian. And it's a real shame. It's a real, real shame. Now, I know there are also the concerns that people have had for a long time of, oh, a character with a stun and base kit, a flank with high burst, and a stun and base kit like that? What the heck, that's way too overpowered. It's really not. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's the shortest stun in the game. Or it was, anyways. It was like 0.7 seconds off the top of the head, making it, if not the shortest, then certainly one of the shortest. And with Unbound, it's barely anything. It's a small interrupt. And yeah, it has some burst to it, but you know what you could have done instead of removing the stun entirely? You could have nerfed the burst. Like they nerfed the burst to 600 this patch, or you could have even gone farther to like 500, something like that. But by nerfing the burst and keeping the stun intact, you still keep what is essentially the core identity of the ability, instead of completely nuking it into the floor like they've just done this patch. And that's what I would have done instead of removing the stun. I don't think removing the stun was a good idea at all. But, yeah. Seems like Caspian is still at least somewhat viable if you're good at him, which I am definitely not. But we're still able to get plenty of kills here. The damage is still adequate. And the damage changes are a bit interesting because of the new armor plating arcane warding shift. And I think that's part of why they nerfed some of his abilities in the way they did. Another nerf that I forgot to mention that is important, but, you know, not like super, super crazy, is they did nerf the damage of the ultimate from 700, or from 800 to 700, which I'm sure you noticed earlier when we were fighting. But that doesn't affect Caspian as much as you might think this patch, because, you know, the ultimate is affected by arcane warding. It's not affected by armor plating. So before, right, in the previous patch, you would buy Haven for Caspian, and that would affect all of his abilities. So you would take the 800 down to like 700 with Haven. Now, the ultimate's just at 700, but it doesn't get affected by armor plating. So when the enemy's by armor plating for you, the ultimate's, you know, it's not getting affected at all. So essentially, the difference isn't really as major as you might think, right? And the same goes for, like, Well, they were going to nerf the damage of measured cadence, they ended up not doing that. But also the damage nerf to Rogue's Tempo. So I think the damage this patch, I mean, yeah, I have to reload more, and measured cadence is slightly weaker now, but for the most part I think it feels still pretty fine, so I don't think they ended up killing Caspian with that department, though they did come close to it. He felt awful on the PTS. Goodness, this Androxus is crazy. But that's actually part of why I didn't upload a video on Caspian for so long, because I played a few matches of him on the PTS, and every time it just felt abysmal. And then they ended up, you know, walking back the changes, so then the footage became pointless. And I've just been busy covering other stuff since then. But of course, I have to wonder what you think about Caspian, because I have my opinions on Caspian. And, well, they could be completely different to yours. They could be, dare I say, wrong? Do I have a wrong idea about Caspian? Oh god. If so, let me know your perspective, of course. But, at the end of the day, like, Caspian's also, he's never really been a super popular character. And I think that's something that's interesting, because they've been trying and trying and trying to make him, you know, not clunky. They released him in one of the clunkiest states I've ever seen a character release in. I mean, he just was so not fluid. Switching between his weapons was terrible, he was buggy, his dash obviously had the issue of not carrying momentum. And, yeah, especially for people trying to learn him, at the time, it's like, oh, this Rogue's Tempo is so slow, and the weapons are awkward, and it's just, none of this kit works. So no one's really gotten invested in this character, except for like a few people. And they've been trying to fix that ever since, but he's also had such a calamitous history in terms of the balance department, because if you look at, you know, Cadence's state in the meta over time, he's basically either been S tier or F tier, with very few in between, right? He's usually either meta-dominating, destroying, like he was last patch, or he's just, you know, no one's really playing because he's bad.
15 seconds remaining.
And I ultimately just want to find sort of a middle ground for this character, where Caspian can, you know, just kind of rest and be a good character who's not overpowered, but not underpowered either. And it's hard to really find a way to do that,
You actually won.
because of, yeah, the sort of fickle nature of him being a glass cannon with high damage and a stun. That can be very, very powerful, but it can also end up making Caspian feel very weak if you just get blown over all the time. So it's kind of a balancing mess. And, I mean, he's not the greatest character design in the game, but I at least appreciate that he's interesting. He's not my cup of tea, but I think, you know, last patch would have been the best time to be a Caspian main, honestly, but even now, in the current patch with these nerfs, Caspian is still feeling pretty darn fluid compared to where he used to be in, you know, the past few years, and, well, if you want to give this character another try, I think it's still a decent time to do that. But my advice to Evil Mojo would be to look into adding the stun back, because just it doesn't feel the same, and it really strips this character of a major part of his identity. Doesn't totally strip him of his effectiveness, obviously. We didn't quite top kill in the lobby because that honor goes to the Mave, but we did do pretty good. But yeah, it makes him less fun to play, and it feels like just a slap in the face to the Caspian mains, honestly. Especially because of what I was talking about earlier, where he got buffed in one way that caused him to be OP, and so then Evil Mojo decided to do something completely random and nerf him in a totally different part of his kit. Doesn't really make sense, and I don't like that strategy of balancing characters. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.